Hello and welcome to Books of Blood. My name is John. I am here with author Syon Das, author of Buried with the Night. How are you doing today, Syon?
Doing pretty good, John. Thanks for having me on. Hope everyone's doing well.
Oh, yeah, we're doing great. All right, so what are we doing today? We are doing our top 10 most underrated horror films. And this is, of course, in my opinion and in Syon's opinion. You might have a different opinion. And if you
Yeah.
do, please let us know down in the comments down below. So, that being said, we've got 10 films, including 3 honorable mentions for a total of 13 films. I'm going to go ahead and give my 3 honorable mentions, and then Syon's going to do the same thing.
Sounds good, man.
And then go with our top 10. All right, my first honorable mention today is going to be Midsommar, directed by Ari Aster. The reason I picked Midsommar is because, as underrated, is because it is still, I feel, is overshadowed by his first film, which was Hereditary. And yet, a lot of times, when I was watching Midsommar, I actually felt like it was, to me, the better film. I loved, I loved Florence Pugh's performance. I love the whole daylight horror thing. I found that to be incredibly frightening. In fact, more frightening to me than the darkness that Hereditary was. All right.
I absolutely agree with you, man. I think even though overall, I think Hereditary will stick with me longer, just because it's the first time I experienced Ari Aster's filmmaking style, and I just wasn't prepared for how unique it really is. So I think
Yes.
that is my the that is I like that one better than Midsommar overall, but I totally agree with you. I think Midsommar is criminally underrated. It's overlooked, and yeah, Florence Pugh is just like amazing in it. Her portrayal of grief, especially in like the first 15-20 minutes, is just outstanding. But yeah.
Yeah. It's like I said, when she finds out that her sister and parents are dead, of course, at her sister's hands, of course, the murder suicide thing. The scream that she lets out is just,
Yeah, it's bone
it goes
chilling, man.
beyond
Yeah.
acting. It's bone chilling. Yes, and also, like I said, I love the daylight horror aspect of it. Which one of my favorite films of all time, The Wicker Man, and I'm not talking about the Nicolas Cage. I'm
Yeah.
talking about the original Wicker Man. Is just one of the greatest examples of folk horror and daylight horror ever done. And this movie reminded me a lot of that movie.
I gotta
So
watch
yeah, that's
the yeah. I definitely have to watch the Wicker Man. I mean, not the I've seen the Nick Cage version, and that's amazing for its own reasons. But it scared me away from checking out the original. So I'm definitely gonna have to give that a shot then. But yeah.
yeah, definitely give it a shot. The acting in it is fantastic. Christopher Lee is such a great villain in that movie. Okay, for my second honorable mention, I'm going to go with 1982's The Howling. And the reason I picked The Howling as an underrated film is because The Howling came out in March of 1982, and a little movie called An American Werewolf in London came out in August of 1982, and it completely overshadows The Howling in every single aspect. And I just feel like that is a criminal thing. I feel The Howling is 100% a better werewolf film. I feel the transformation, the main transformation scene in that film is head and shoulders above American Werewolf as far as the setting, as far as the makeup effects, and I don't feel like makeup artist Rob Bottin gets enough credit for the makeup in that film. Um, Also, I feel like the acting was better in The Howling than I did in American Werewolf. Yes, I did think that David Naughton, who of course was the original was the Dr. Pepper guy before he did this movie. I did think that he was good, but I thought they had a great cast of B movie horror actors in The Howling that just ate up the scenery and were just fantastic. Of course, the star of the movie was Dee Wallace, and she just knocked it out of the park as the female lead in the film. And if you don't know who Dee Wallace is, she is the woman who played the mother in E.T. She's been in so many horror films, including Rob Zombie's recent film, which was the Three from Hell.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's been in a lot of movies and a lot of horror films. The Hills Have Eyes, a lot of different horror movies. Uh, I just as I just as an overall, I just felt like the Howling just got so overlooked by American Werewolf. And it's like I was telling my wife today, I kind of compare the Howling and American Werewolf to, and this is, I know this is going to sound kind of tacky, but it's whenever Farrah Fawcett and Michael Jackson passed away. Farrah Fawcett, they both passed away on the same day,
Yeah.
but she passed away earlier and he passed away last. And
Yeah.
you don't hear anything about her death, but you hear everything about
Yeah,
his.
exactly. Yeah,
So,
that's a
I
good
mean,
analogy. Yeah, like
yes.
in terms of just straight werewolf movies, I definitely need to check out The Howling.
All right, for my last pick for honorable mention, I'm going to go with Don't Breathe. And this is directed by Fede Alvarez. Of course, stars Jane Levy and Stephen Lang. Nobody ever talks about this movie. And it is actually, to me, one of the absolute best home invasion movies ever made.
I agree.
And I
No.
think the reason I think it is one of the best films is because it turns the home invasion film completely on its rear end.
Yeah, for sure.
You
Yeah.
know,
I mean, just the performances in that movie are just like amazing across the board. It's extremely dark and brutal for a mainstream American movie because I remember watching that in theaters, man, when it came out. I was having a blast. Half the audience was not, especially we're going to try to stay away from spoilers, guys, for all these movies, but I can give nods to certain things. So like all I'll say is the scene involving a turkey baster. It really and then John always he has a funny line regarding the movie's called Don't Breathe, but what do you think it should have been called after that scene?
when I was in a movie theater seeing it, there was a guy about two seats down from me,
Yeah.
and when the scene with the turkey baster happens, and let's just say that one character takes the turkey baster, and it is full of a certain bodily fluid that we're not going to mention on YouTube itself. I don't want to get blocked or anything like that.
Yeah.
But this person takes and shoves the turkey baster into the villain's mouth. And I looked at this guy and I said, well, I guess they're going to have to change the title from Don't Breathe to Don't Swallow.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not the most vile American movie you'll see probably, but it's definitely up there in terms of how unflinchingly violent and dark certain scenes are. You're really going to have a good time and feel genuinely unsettled throughout a lot of it.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. I think one of the most unsettling scenes to me was when one of the guys was backed up against the wall and they had a gun up underneath their head. I'm not going to go any further with that
Yeah,
because I
yeah.
don't want to spoil anything,
Exactly,
but
yeah.
that was just creepy as could
Phenomenal
be. So,
scene. Yeah, very well done for sure. And I really enjoy how the movie opens too. It's a very brave opening for a movie in terms of the storytelling where it goes, but they chose to open it a certain way, and I love the way it ended too.
yes, yes, exactly. So that is my top three for honorable mention. So now,
Cool, man. Awesome.
what
So
are
I guess
Syon Das's top picks for honorable mention?
coming in at number one is a very underrated cosmic horror movie that my buddy Spooky Noodles, aka Nicholas Gray, recommended I watch. It was made in 2016. It's called The Void. It not only has one of the most unsettling and just messed up creatures I've seen in any movie in a long time. The acting was terrific, actually. Most of it was well above average. The practical effects are very, very well done. It reminded me a lot of actually John Carpenter's The Thing in parts, which was always a plus. The atmosphere was completely drenched in dread too. And overall, if you're someone who's into creature features and things like H.P. Lovecraft and just really bizarro horror almost, I'd say you're gonna have a blast with The Void. 2016's The Void, so I had to include it here, even though it's talked about in a lot of horror circles. among like, like pretty hardcore fans of horror. It's still not known by the general public, and I think The Void, especially because it's so widely available, I think it's on Shudder, it's on Tubi for free. It's well worth a watch. So that's my first honorable mention. Have you seen The Void?
Yes, I have seen The Void, and I do have my thoughts on it.
No.
First of all, let's say first of all about Nick, Spooky Noodles. Uh,
Yeah.
just a super fantastic, nice guy.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I want to get that out of the way. Just a very generous guy. For me, The Void. If you want a good companion piece to The Void, you were talking about the creature in The Void. If
Yeah.
you want a good companion piece to that, you might want to check out Color Out of Space with Nicolas Cage. It just
Yeah,
came out a
I
couple of
just saw
months or
that
so
on
ago.
Shudder. Yeah.
And also, yeah, I do agree with you about the comparison to The Thing,
Yeah.
which I think is one of the greatest cosmic horror movies. And if somebody says it's not a cosmic horror film, it's definitely The Thing is definitely a cosmic horror movie because you're talking about this misshapen creature. So yeah, definitely to me a cosmic horror movie.
Yeah,
So
the reason guys are referred to the Void as cosmic horror and as bizarro, which I know is mostly that term is reserved for like as a literary genre, but I want to be vague about the other subgenres the Void traverses, so you guys can just get the best experience possible because it goes to some pretty wild places. But yeah,
yeah, exactly. What I was going to say about Color Out of Space is that there is one scene where you could actually say it's a monstrosity that is created by this cosmic entity
yeah.
that is just mind blowing. And did you say you've seen Color Out of Space or you haven't seen it?
No, I saw the thumbnail
Okay,
for it on Shudder and it had Nick Cage, so I was already I'm in for it.
sounds good. He's a very his acting as of late with his horror films has just been fantastic. I think I don't know, with Wicker Man notwithstanding, we're not even going to include that one, but yes,
Yeah.
his horror performances have been great as of late.
Yeah, dude, got to check
So
out his movie Mom and Dad. They came out, and I also got to watch Mandy, which I hear just phenomenal things about.
I've got Mom and Dad on DVD. I think it's either DVD or
Yeah,
Blu-ray.
I
I've
hear
got
it's
Mom and Dad.
quite the ride.
Yeah, it's probably Soma. I think it may be Soma Blair's last film
Okay.
before she came down with multiple sclerosis.
Oh, that's
So
unfortunate.
she's not acting too much anymore, and I think she's of course, very underrated actress as well.
So
That's
that's
your
okay.
first pick.
Yes. Yep. So
Yeah,
that's my first honorable mention. My second one, guys, is one that you've probably anyone who surfs Amazon Prime's horror section has seen it. You probably don't click on it because it's first of all it's a sequel to a movie that I think is underappreciated to begin with, and the sequel I'm talking about is Wolf Creek 2, 2013's Wolf Creek 2. This is a direct sequel to the original Wolf Creek, which I think is, like I said, very underappreciated, much more atmospheric and suspenseful than I think people give credit for. Because when you think of Wolf Creek, many people just think of, I don't like to use the word torture porn, but let's just be honest, that's what most people think of when you say Wolf Creek, and to me, that's not what it is at all. It's a very chilling, decently acted, very well done uh, horror thriller basically. And Wolf Creek 2 is not that. Wolf Creek 2 is absolutely it's made for diehard fans of the slasher genre, particularly fans of 80s slashers that just revel in the gore and effects and violence. It doesn't waste any time from the opening scene involving a police car to the last shot of the movie. It's absolutely phenomenal. In terms of just a entertaining wild ride, guys, you need to check out Wolf Creek 2. John Jarratt, I believe is the actor's name, who plays the main serial killer in that, Mick Taylor. You can tell he has so much fun with the role, playing this psychotic sadist. And yeah, it's just fun to see someone have so much fun playing a villain, and he's a good actor too. So it has to be said as one of the most underrated slasher movies in the last few years, I think. So Wolf Creek 2.
yeah. I've actually seen Wolf Creek 2. I know what you're talking about with the police car. That was
Oh
just
yeah,
such an out of nowhere
ridiculous.
uh, gore scene. It was just fantastic. So
Yeah.
yeah, and to me with John Jarrett,
Yeah.
I just feel that I personally think that if Wolf Creek had been an American-made movie, still starring him, that his star would have risen so much higher as a horror film actor than it did.
I
Because he's
agree,
another
man.
one, like I said, you see him in a few things, but that's the one that he's going to be the most famous for. You
Yeah.
know,
And
and
I
you're
think
right.
I'm not sure if he plays because I know there's a Wolf Creek series, which I hear great things about too on Shudder. I haven't checked it out. I'm pretty sure he continues his role as Mick Taylor in that, which is just great. He's like the Wolverine of the Wolf Creek series. I can't see anyone else playing this character.
I have seen the series. There have been 2 seasons so
Yeah.
far. I've seen both seasons, and yes, he does.
Okay, great.
He does reprise the role, and he is
Yeah.
absolutely fantastic.
Awesome.
One thing I love about his character is that ridiculous laugh that he has.
Yeah.
That it's just one of those laughs that just chills you to your bone when you
Oh
hear it.
yeah. And he has this weird sort of dirty charisma about him too. You know what I mean? When he just smiles at the camera, the way he talks, you're like, man, I would definitely I feel like I would have a total blast hanging out with this guy if he wasn't a complete psychopath. Okay, and for my third and final honorable mention, one of the most underrated horror movies. It's a 2009 film called Triangle. This is another one that's well known by a lot of hardcore, diehard horror fans, but still, it's a very underappreciated movie that I feel actually a lot of non-horror fans will enjoy too. I don't want to spoil one thing about it, but all I'll say is that you don't have to be a horror fan to enjoy this movie. It is one of the most tight, well written, and highly unpredictable scripts I've ever seen in a horror film. And I believe it's by Christopher Smith. Triangle 2009's Triangle has great cinematography, fantastic acting across the board, and just a totally original concept. Where they go with it is like the core concept is probably we've seen it since then a lot in different movies, but I've never seen a movie go through so many subgenres of horror so seamlessly while maintaining a coherent story, and it's just fantastic overall. I don't want to say anything else about it. Melissa George is fantastic in as the leading lady, and yeah, if you're into this is not too much of a spoiler, I guess. If you're into horror that subverts your expectations, so think of movies like Cabin in the Woods. If you enjoy going into a horror film and being pleasantly surprised by other genres that it explores, you're gonna absolutely love Triangle. And the ending was extremely well done too. And yeah, it's a must watch in my opinion, and criminally underrated.
I've seen Triangle once.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I don't remember 100% very much about it.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
do agree with you though that Melissa George was fantastic. So
Yeah.
that's going to be one of those that I'm going to have to go back and give a rewatch to and pay a lot more attention to it.
Yeah.
Probably I was probably not in just I probably watched it when I wasn't in a good place, and just probably need to give it another chance. So yeah, yeah, sounds like a great movie.
Awesome, man.
All right, for number 10, like I said, what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to go from the ones that I feel are the least underrated. In other words, most people have heard about them, but probably not as many as you would hope, or something like that. I'm not really sure how to put that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but for the first one, I'm going to go with Paranormal Activity 3. I'm
Cool,
not
man.
sure what year this came out. 2011.
Okay.
The reason I pick it is because usually the third film in a series, if it goes that far, can either be the best film in the series or it can be the worst film. And I think that aside from the first Paranormal Activity, I feel like that Paranormal Activity 3 is the second best film in the series. And the reason I think so is because it gives you an explanation, or starts to give you an explanation, for just what the hell is going on with Katie and why this entity, this demon, has been following her entire life. And it also kind of ties in events of the first Paranormal Activity and Paranormal Activity 2. So that's my reason why I pick it as an underrated horror movie. It's like I said, you just don't hear that many people talk about it. And a lot of my picks are going to be for that reason, is because I think they deserve more attention than they're actually getting. So
Absolutely, man. Like, and for my top 10, and I'll get to Paranormal Activity in a second, but for my top 10, I agree. I really tried to go with picks that some of them are probably well known, quote unquote, but they're still very underappreciated. And some of them I guarantee you guys have never heard of, a lot of you guys out there. And we have to remember this is not John's channel is primarily not a movie based channel. So hopefully people watching this who are really into horror literature and you might just be getting into horror movies, I envy you because there's a lot of great stuff for you to watch. But yeah, so going back to Paranormal Activity, I'm a huge fan of the first one. It's actually one of my favorite horror movies of all time, I think. It's been made
me
fun
too.
of needlessly. It's so suspenseful and it's genuinely still scares me to this day. So I'm a huge fan of the first one. I'm a fan of the second one too. I've not seen the third one, but I remember seeing the trailer and being genuinely unsettled. I'm thinking like, man, that looks actually pretty well done and creepy. And I remember if there was a fourth one. I think I saw it and I've seen the Ghost Dimension, which I wasn't the biggest fan of. So I definitely need to give, number 3 a watch.
Yeah, I think there have actually been 6 films total, including the one that was kind of an offshoot called the Marked Ones.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I haven't seen that one either.
I've actually, to be honest with you, I've actually seen them all. I
Yeah,
I love
yeah,
myself, but between one, I think 1, 2, and 3 are definitely my favorite of the series. So yeah, that is my number 10 pick, and that is Paranormal Activity 3
yeah. And
from
from what I hear,
2011.
man, you're not like alone in that. Really, the people who love the franchise say number 1 is their favorite overall, but many people say number 3 is the scariest.
Well, there used to be, and I don't know if there still is, but there used to be. Uh, I don't know if you could order it on Amazon Prime or on one of the streaming stations, but you could order the entire series. I think it went from Paranormal Activity 1 to Paranormal Activity 3.
Yeah,
Excuse me. And it was done in such a way that it did it in absolute chronological order. I
yeah.
never got a chance to see that, but I thought that was kind of an interesting premise. So
Yeah, dude. I mean, I definitely that would be a fun series just to sit down and marathon, especially with October coming up. And I could say that about a lot of different series, but that one in particular because it is underrated, I think. There all those garbage spoof movies didn't help to kind of bolster the actual work that went behind making some of those movies genuinely creepy. So I definitely need to revisit that for sure.
exactly. I like,
Yeah.
yeah, good, great film.
Yeah.
That was
Awesome,
my
man.
number 10.
Cool. Okay, so my number 10 is it's an American movie that was mainstream, but no one I know heard of this movie, including you, I believe, right? When I mentioned it to you. So number 10 is 2010's Joshua. That's the
Yeah,
name of the
exactly.
movie.
No,
Yep.
never heard of
So
it.
so
Sorry.
this is not a premise that's wholly original. It's essentially about a newborn girl that arrives in a family and there this family has a 9-year-old son named Joshua and that's all I want to say. If you guys are fans of movies like The Omen, which is funny, I mentioned that because there's a lot of fans of The Omen. I know I for one don't actually care for that movie too much, but just for I think it's a little bit dated in terms of the scare factor, but the acting is great in that. So if you're a fan of movies like that, and a better example, another movie that I love is if you're a fan of the movie We Need to Talk About Kevin, and or movies like Orphan, you will absolutely love this movie. Sam Rockwell and Vera Farmiga are just phenomenal as usual, but the star of this movie really is that kid, man, Jacob Kogan, the guy who plays Joshua. By far the scariest performance from a child actor I've ever seen. He is beyond convincing as this very chilling psychopath and or sociopath, I guess you could say. It's the script is not crazy. That's what I like about it. Everything that happens in this movie is all the more terrifying because if you're a parent or you have a brother, a younger brother or older brother, you could definitely see this happening in real life. The script is really grounded. It's dark as hell for a mainstream flick, and it's very entertaining. And actually, after watching this, I was so I remember watching this as a young kid, but still thinking, man, I don't think I ever want to have kids when I grow up. And my uh, this really is my favorite film centered around this kind of subject matter, right behind Orphan, and we need to talk about Kevin. And I know Orphan, I don't want to get into spoilers for that. Some people might argue with me saying that, but genuinely based off like the overall premise, I think you could lump those three together. So 2010's Joshua, I highly recommend it.
All right. Now, speaking about that, now, like you're right, I have not seen Joshua. However,
Oh,
I did see Orphan, and
yeah.
I did see, in fact, I actually own a copy of both films. We need to talk about Kevin. Uh, yeah, so I'm definitely stoked to see Joshua after you've compared him to those two movies.
Oh yeah, dude.
And of course, yeah, and of course, like you said, with Vera Farmiga and Sam Rockwell, you
Brilliant.
can't go wrong.
Absolutely, they're brilliant as usual. But I'm telling you, man, I'm blown away every time I watch this movie. I'm blown away by Jacob Kogan, and it's so sad. I tried looking uh, to see what other work he's been in, like what are the things he's done. He hasn't gotten that much work since then, which is genuinely very sad because anyone who watches this movie will say that is one creepy kid, man. And to give that convincing of a performance in a role as a sociopath at that young of an age is truly impressive and kind of creepy, I think.
Okay. All right. For my number 9 pick, I'm going to pick one that is a remake. And this is directed by Fede Alvarez, stars Jane Levy. And of course, I'm talking about the Evil Dead remake.
Awesome.
The reason I picked this one is because I just don't feel like this movie gets anywhere near enough love. I've actually gone online and read comments about this film that basically they compare this movie to garbage. They just tear this movie completely apart. And the main reason is because the only reason I can find is because it's a remake of a very beloved horror movie, which of course is The Evil Dead, and of course a very beloved horror movie hero, that
Yeah.
being Ash, Bruce Campbell. But this movie, just as far as a horror movie and as far as a gore fest, this movie pretty much kicks some ass. The scene where Jane Levy's character loses her hand is just absolutely horrifying and just cringe inducing to look at. And also the fact is I think a lot of people took offense at the fact that she is going to turn out to be the new Ash, and a lot of people are totally against her being given that title.
Okay.
However, Bruce Campbell himself has pretty much given his blessing. So I'm saying this: if Bruce gives his blessing for this, I absolutely give mine as well. The premise of this movie is the same thing as the first movie in the original movie. You got your cabin in the woods. You got your book that has all these curses and stuff, and if you read from it, all hell breaks loose, and that is exactly what happens in this movie. And it is absolutely a fantastic and criminally underrated horror movie.
I have a much more horrifying time watching the remake because it truly is very, very disturbing in parts and horrifically brutal and violent. Which was just a joy to see it in theaters, man. As a teenager, it totally made my day. I remember, and I everything from the CGI was well done, the gore was well done. I think a lot of the reason people might have a problem with it is, like you said, it's just not the original, which I never like as an argument for hating a remake. And I feel the best way to enjoy this movie, if you guys haven't seen it and you are a fan of the original, and the good news is if you hated the original, you still might love this remake because what they do with the plot, it is similar in some aspects, but the tone is so different. What really goes on is so different in terms of even the violence, the violent acts that occur. Highly recommend it, whether or not you dig the original. I, for one, think the original is a masterpiece for sure in the way it was shot, in how cheesy it is, but it also has its completely terrifying and unsettling moments, which it's very well known for. And yeah, the whole Evil Dead, all the movies, including Army of Darkness, which a lot of people don't like, which I love. Well,
I
if
loved it.
there's a
Loved
certain
it.
kind of humor you need, obviously, and that's very evident by the hand scene in the second one. The first one is a lot more interested in scaring you, I think, which I always appreciate. There's a horrific scene involving a tree, which I won't get into. That's like forever iconic. So I love the first one for all the things it brought to the table. It's in my top 5 or 6 horror movies of all time for sure. This remake is in my top 10 because I view it as something else entirely. Like John said, it absolutely deserves to be on this list. You can actually pair them together because they're so different in tone that it won't even feel like you're watching the same movie. And I don't think they like you can bestow bigger praise than that on a remake of a movie.
You were talking about the scene, and I don't want to spoil anything.
Yep.
Yeah, you were talking about the scene with the branch or the tree. I know
Yeah.
exactly what scene you're talking about. I just want to say that in the remake, there is a scene involving a knife and a certain body part. If if you know which one I'm talking about,
Of course, yeah.
that is absolutely cringe-inducing. In
Horrifying.
fact, yeah, it'll make your sphincter just it'll make it protract or something. I don't know.
Absolutely, yeah. Cool, yeah. Okay. So from here on out, guys, I do want to mention, and I don't remember, we did exchange lists before this, guys, but I don't remember all the movies on your list, but I'm sure it applies to some of them, especially one or two of them. I definitely recommend everyone check out these movies if you're looking for good horror movies. Just keep in mind that a lot of them contain absolutely boundary pushing content in terms of everything. So IMDb is a great site. If you guys are like a little more sensitive and want to check out the content of some of these movies, definitely check go on imdb.com, and they usually list the triggers in like the parental advisory section. So just wanted to give that as a disclaimer because I won't be spoiling any of the acts that go on in some of these movies because I feel they should be experienced, just fresh. Go into all of these blind if you can, but if you are someone who's sensitive, definitely check beforehand for triggers because I won't talk about them here. But yeah, okay. So my number 9 is a movie I know John's a huge fan of. It doesn't get enough love. It's a British film, I'm pretty sure. Uh, it's 2008's Eden Lake. Absolutely fantastic. It is one of the best extreme thrillers ever made, in my opinion, and no one ever talks about it. I don't think I've ever seen a movie with teenagers this genuinely scary. Michael Fassbender gives one of his most underrated performances in this as Kelly Riley's husband. Both of them portray genuine terror very well, which I think is a big part when it comes to the audience themselves feeling scared. Another totally different movie and a sidetrack, but Ethan Hawke in Sinister, I think, portrays terror very well too. And that is an iconic performance in terms of someone genuinely looking terrified of what's going on in their life in a movie. And that definitely occurs in Eden Lake. The script is absolutely fantastic. It's written and directed by James Watkins, who directed The Woman in Black with Daniel Radcliffe, which I also love. The script is very, very brave with the directions it took the plot in. It's an unpredictable throughout, and the ending is one that really, really stuck with me. I think a lot of people will hate it for what happens, but I personally loved it. And what are your thoughts on Eden Lake, John?
My thoughts on Eden Lake: terrifying, brutal. Yeah, any adjective that I could give you probably is not gonna do this film justice.
Yeah.
Oh, good grief. Okay, let's start with the leader. Let's start with the leader of the kids of the gang of the
Oh yeah,
teenagers.
I forgot to. You're right.
Uh,
That's a great point, man. Jack O'Connell is his name. Yeah, he is great in depicting very angry and rageful youth. He made a prison flick, dude, with Ben Mendelsohn called Start Up, which he was amazing in, outstanding performance. You're right. He is absolutely terrifying in this.
Yeah, I think that final scene with him after, well, God, I'd be giving away complete spoilers. I don't want to
Yeah.
do that. But yeah, I think that final scene with him is just one of the most terrifying. And it's just such a simple scene. There's no blood, there's no gore, there's no anything like that. But it's just so impactful, you know.
Yeah, this is
Uh,
one of the more extreme horror movies that doesn't rely on too much violence, I'd say. It's more about the atmosphere and the acting that really sells the terror.
yeah, as far as you were talking about Michael Fassbender, yeah, that pretty much that movie pretty much sealed the deal for me as realizing just how fantastic an actor he is.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, he conveyed terror very much like you're talking about with Ethan Hawke and Sinister, which I saw that and I absolutely love Sinister
Yeah.
also. So yes, but Eden Lake, uh, to be honest with you, when you mentioned that he was the also the director of the remake, or not the remake, but the director of the Woman Black with Daniel Radcliffe,
Yeah.
it's really hard to believe that this same guy is the director of those two films.
Yeah, don't expect you're going to get the same experience from Eden Lake at all in terms of how
No,
terrified you'll be.
yeah, no. If you're one of these people that you kind of pay attention to who directed a movie or who acted in it or whatever, and you've seen The Woman in Black, and then you go, well, let's find something else to watch by this
Yeah.
guy, and you go, oh, here, Eden Lake, let's watch this. You're going to be in for a big damn surprise. It's what you're going to be in for.
Yeah.
So
Pleasantly surprised maybe, but maybe not, depending on how sick you are in the head, I guess. But it's very, yeah, I had to put it in my top 10, man. Top 10 underrated. Eden Lake 2008 for sure.
okay, for my number 8 pick, before I give you what my number 8 pick is, what I want to do is a little bit of, I guess, a disclaimer. I know that a lot of these films that I'm going to mention are remakes of beloved horror films. Of course, I mentioned Evil Dead, the remake, and how beloved the original Evil Dead is. And this one here is no exception to that. And I'm talking about the remake of Suspiria. A lot of people, I have gone online and looked at commentary or comments, excuse me, for this remake. And yes, I have had some people that I've looked at that have absolutely loved this movie. I've never had anybody say they thought this movie was better than the original. And I'm not saying that the remake of Suspiria is better. I am saying that it is just as good as the original film. And the thing about it is that they are two films with the same premise. This girl that moves into this school of dance, and I believe in the original film it was Italy, and I think in the remake it's Germany. I'm going to look at my.
Yeah, I'm
Let's
pretty sure
see.
you're right.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Germany. Of course, and it turns out, and this is not really spoiling anything because I'm giving you the plot of the original film, which is pretty much the plot of the remake.
Yeah.
It is run by a coven of witches.
Great premise.
And
Forever master, just forever such an inventive premise. Yeah.
very inventive premise. It's just the thing is that the remake took a different route, and whereas the original film had these beautiful color palettes, of course, being directed by Dario Argento, and absolutely he is one of the greatest horror film directors of all time. I'll even forgive him for the shitty Dracula remake that he did with, I believe it was Rutger Hauer. Was it Rutger Hauer was in that?
I'm not
I'm trying to
sure, man.
think.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen it actually.
Yeah, I think it was Rutger Hauer. Rest in peace, Rutger. But geez, dude, that was a horrible movie. But even so, I mean, uh, well, and also with the Dracula remake, that starred Asia Argento, and that's his daughter.
Cool. Okay.
And
That
he
wow,
was,
that's pretty cool.
yeah, and there are a lot of topless scenes in this movie within that movie with his daughter, and I'm thinking that's not creepy at all. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I'm totally digressing here. But yes, the reason I think that Suspiria, the remake, is just as good as Suspiria, the original film, is because it is the same movie, but it does take a totally different approach.
Yeah.
The performances in this movie are fantastic. Tilda Swinton plays 3 roles, including a male role,
Yeah, she
and of
knocks it
course
out of the
Dakota.
park. Yeah.
Oh yeah, exactly, and also Dakota Johnson just does a fantastic role in the one that was originally portrayed by Jessica Harper, Susie Banyan. So yeah, that is why I love Suspiria the remake. And like I said, I'm trying to keep the hate away from me just a little bit, if you know what I mean. Yes, I did. I love the remake. I love the original, and I just think the remake is so underrated. So
I
yeah, that is my number 8 pick, I believe it is. Yes.
Yeah, you know what? Well, you know what, man? I need to rewatch that movie. I didn't watch it in the right headspace, and I came away from it thinking it was okay, only because the ending totally tonally did not work for me with the rest of the movie. Like, and anyone who's seen it knows what I'm talking about. It is, without giving any spoilers, it can be seen as extremely over the top. With like the last 15 minutes, I agree with everything else you said, though. I think the cinematography is just out of this world good. The dancing. If for nothing else, you guys should check out this movie for how what how they choose to handle the dancing in this movie, and I think it's very well done. Like I said, the cinematography is crazy. Some really disturbing, haunting shots. And I'm all for all of that. I was actually a huge fan of how cohesive it all seemed despite being experimental. And in terms of the performances, I agree with you. Tilda Swinton is amazing as always. Dakota Johnson was surprisingly good to me because I never thought of her as like a really good actress, but she killed it in this. And the stand-up performance for me, man, it's one of the scariest performances I've seen in a while from an actress. It was by Angela Winkler. She
Right.
played the right hand woman of Tilda Swinton, as Tilda Swinton playing the head teacher of this school, and it was very very unsettling. Certain looks she'd give the camera, and I just think as an overall package, I really really dug it until that ending happened, and I think if I give it a rewatch, having sat with the ending for some time now, I think I'll be able to appreciate it even more. And definitely, I definitely agree with you that it's criminally underrated though, and more people need to respect the work that went into it.
Well, and I like the fact that when we're talking about these films and the ones that we have seen, that we've both seen,
Yeah.
I like the fact that we have this, where you may not like something particularly that I liked in the film or whatever. Where we have this um, a camaraderie where we can agree to disagree. You
Oh yeah,
know,
man. Like civil
you
discourse.
know
Yeah, of course.
exactly.
Yeah.
Another thing I'll say is that I thought the remake, the Suspiria remake, had a fantastic soundtrack, which of course is by Tom York of Radiohead. In fact, I've got the soundtrack.
Yep, absolutely
So
agree, man. That last song, "Unmade," I think it's called, that plays. That's not a spoiler because I'm not spoiling what happens in the scene, but I think the song they picked for that scene it fit very well. It hit me in a certain way for sure. And Tom York's just awesome. Radiohead is great, but and it is cool that they were able to match the. I'm not gonna like obviously like Goblin's original score for Suspiria is like legendary, but yeah, Tom York definitely does his best, and the music is like very very good for sure in the remake. Okay, so my number 8 is a very underrated. I'm gonna keep saying that for each one because it's true. A very underrated, absolutely vile, disgusting, depraved, horrifying, extreme Indonesian cult movie called Macabre. It's 2008's Macabre. So the basic premise is about these two newlyweds that are traveling with their three best friends to take an interstate road trip, and they want one of their friends to reconcile with his little sister who he hasn't seen in a long time. Needless to say, their trip comes to a brief halt when they run into this girl named Maya. She seems normal enough, a little strange, but she basically tells them she's been robbed and she needs if they could give her a ride to her house, which is at the end of these creepy ass woods, she'll be fine. That is all I will say. It turns into an absolute nightmare. This is easily the most brutal and terrifying cult movie I've seen in my life. it is Indonesian, like I said. So just read subtitles; it's worth it, guys. There is a huge cast of characters who all give decent performances, and the best performance and actress in this whole movie is the woman playing the mother, Maya's mother, Dara, and the actress's name is Sharifa Danish. I don't want to spoil anything, but just know you're going to feel uneasy and hiding every single second she's on screen. She has this very, very creepy delivery. I don't think I've ever heard from an actress uh, in a horror movie before that makes everything she says. It sounds very pristine and clear, but it just sounds disgusting at the same time, and it blends in completely well with the overall tone of the movie. It's truly a memorable performance. The practical effects are incredible. The gore is absolutely insane, so just be ready for that. If you're not into gore, definitely do not watch this. If you're into it, you're going to be in for a treat. The gore is very well done. Practical effects are great. Tons of well done action scenes actually too, which I was a huge fan of. And as a side note, Indonesia is known for some kick-ass action movies too. If you guys haven't seen you know, the Raid movies directed by Gareth Evans, if you haven't seen The Night Comes for Us, which is on Netflix, Headshot, all these are some great Indonesian action films. The action scenes in this movie are not like that, but they're very well done and they fit the tone perfectly. There's a lot of suspense, and once the plot really kicks off, it's absolutely relentless till the end of the movie. No one talks about this movie, even people from Indonesia. I have a couple of Indonesian friends who have not seen this, and they're like, "Man, I didn't know my country like, made movies this good." So I'm like, "You're welcome." And I highly recommend fans of grindhouse cinema and fans of foreign films. This is like a must watch.
Yeah, okay, so this is definitely one that I have not seen, but I will say this much: you had me at depraved.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, as soon as you said depraved, I'm like, yes, this is a movie I want to see. Now, is this movie available on Amazon, any kind of the streaming
So
services?
I had seen this legally online when I was in
Ah,
a high school because I looked for it everywhere else and I could not find it. I'm pretty sure it is on Amazon. Amazon's weird with foreign films, man. Sometimes it says it's available. When you click on it, it says title's not available. So
yeah.
it cycles sometimes. Definitely, it's 2008's Macabre. Definitely check Amazon for it. If it's only available in on DVD, guys, I 100% guarantee you will not regret buying it if you were a fan of very violent and well done horror movies. And while we're talking about Indonesian films, some Indonesian films you guys can check out that are available on streaming platforms. Like I said, The Night Comes for Us and Headshot are two action films that are available on Netflix. And if you want to watch an Indonesian horror film, you guys must check out this movie called Satan's Slaves, which is one in my top three scariest movies of all time, Satan's Slaves. So that is available on Shudder. So yeah, so that's going to be my number 8, 2008's Macabre.
Okay, for my number 7 pick, I'm going to go with the comedy horror film by the name of Tucker and Dale versus Evil. The reason I picked this film is because in most horror films, when you've got a group of teenagers and you've got a cabin in the woods and you've got redneck, hillbillies, whatever you want to call them, usually the case is that the rednecks and the hillbillies are the villains and the teenagers are on the run from these said villains to keep from being eaten, chopped up, murdered in any which way possible by the
Yeah.
villains. Wrong Turn comes to mind. And this movie, Tucker and Dale versus Evil, completely turns that on its head. In this movie, the teenagers are the villains, and the two hillbillies are the victims, so to speak,
Yeah.
of these teenagers, and it makes for one of the funniest and in some places one of the goriest horror films or comedy horror films ever made. Uh, every performance in this movie, especially from the probably what you would consider the four main leads, that being Alan Tudyk, who of course was in Firefly, Taylor Labine, Katrina Bowden, who is a fantastic as a the dumb blonde part, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Jesse Moss as the main villain. They all are absolutely fantastic, and they are all hilarious. So yeah, Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
Absolutely, man. I totally agree with everything you just said. It's very underrated. Taylor Labine, first of all, is very underrated comedic actor, I think. And he just gets overshadowed by like, the usual suspects, but he's definitely an actor worth checking out. And the my favorite performance in this movie is I believe you said, what was the kid who played the main basically villain, Jesse Voss, right? You said
Jesse Moss. I believe it was Jesse
Jesse
Moss.
Moss. Jesse Moss.
Yeah.
Okay. I've the guys in slasher movies, how there's the trope of that one guy in the group who always takes things too seriously and he tries to be macho. Jesse Moss takes it to another level in this, and it's one of the funniest things I've seen ever in my life. If he is he is so hell bent on taking care of these hillbillies, and there's a scene involving a wood chipper that's iconic, and the ending is actually very, very suspenseful and thrilling. So yeah, Tucker and Dale versus Evil is like a huge favorite of mine for sure.
Yeah, but yes, I love Tucker and Dale versus Evil. So that was my number 7 pick.
Awesome. Okay, so my number 7, even though I gave a disclaimer before about content, guys, I'm going to give one again. This movie it doesn't just have some triggers. The whole movie, it should, like, another title for it should just be trigger warning, because there's so many potential triggers in this movie. So definitely do your research before checking this one out. Take this warning very, very seriously. I'm not going to spoil anything here, but just know that 2015's Cat Sick Blues is one of the most inventive, unique, well done, horrifying, disgusting, depraved, messed up, twisted things I've ever seen in my life. And it is so underrated, and more people, extreme fans of horror, need to check this out. So, this story is basically about this dude named Ted, whose pet cat dies on him, and this triggers a mental breakdown and makes him want to bring his pet cat back to life, and all he needs is 9 human lives. So that's the basic premise of this movie. It is an Australian movie. This felt like the best bizarro slasher novel that was never written. That's basically, and if that sounds just awesome to you, it is exactly as awesome as it sounds. There's scenes in this movie that you'll never be able to erase from your memory once you've seen them. There's some sections that disgusted me to my stomach absolutely, and others made me wince. Matthew C. Vaughn, who plays the lead creep, essentially Ted in this movie, gives a bone-chilling and extremely disturbing performance. He really makes some of these scenes very hard to watch in the best way possible. The script is the definition of unique. I was never sure where the violence is going to appear and how it's going to erupt when it does, and that really keeps you on edge truly the whole time. And you're not even sure when the movie truly ends until it finally does. And I know that's a weird thing to say, but you'll understand what I mean when you see the movie. This movie's definitely on the art house side of things, so if you want a really coherent plot, like all the way through, that doesn't take its time or meander, then don't check this one out. This movie's the definition of nightmare fuel, in my opinion. So if you want something that'll get under your skin and just make you terrified to meet new people, to just if you're having a good day and you don't want it to get ruined, do not watch this movie. And if you're having a shitty day and don't want it to be worse, don't watch this movie. So you really need to be in a particular headspace to watch this one, and I guarantee that it will test your boundaries and creep the living hell out of you. So that's 2015's Cat Sick Blues.
All right. So that one is definitely one that, to be honest with you, not only have I not seen this one, I've actually never heard of it.
Yeah.
But you do have my interest piqued. And another thing I was going to say is that if we ever do decide to make another video, I would really love to do one like maybe a top 5 or top 10 most disturbing
I will
horror films.
I will absolutely take
Yeah.
you up on that, man.
Yeah, because that one definitely sounds. That one and Macabre both sound very effed up.
Yeah, I'm creating the list for that in my head right now. That'll be a
Yeah,
lot of
I'm
fun to
trying.
talk
Yeah,
about.
yeah, I know exactly what my number one's going to be for that list.
Oh,
Yeah.
and by the way, you
Uh,
said, yeah, Macabre is effed up. Catsick Blues Macabre. It looks like Marley and Me compared to Catsick Blues. Catsick Blues is just, oh yeah, dude, it's another level of sick and extreme. And yeah, I highly recommend it though.
so in other words, what you're saying is there's a better chance of Disney remaking Macabre before they remake Cat Sick Blues.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah, I can't
Sounds
wait.
good,
I can't
man.
wait for the Macabre ride at Universal Studios.
Sounds
Yeah,
great. Yeah, like I said, it does. It sounds like Cat Sick Blues sounds just like, yeah, definitely one right up my alley.
yeah,
And you were talking about trigger warnings and stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, that would be one for me. That would be a trigger because I am a cat person. So anytime I lose one of my cats, my wife
yeah.
and I right now, we've got like 12 cats. So anytime we lose one of them, it does affect us very much so.
Let me
So
tell
yeah,
you,
that'll be a definite trigger for me.
yeah, it really is a brave film to make, and I think it really does a good job at making you just disturbed to your very core, even as a hardened horror fan, which almost no films do anymore. So I really think that'll be right up your alley, man. Yeah. So that was my number
Sounds good.
7.
Okay, so my number 6 pick is 2014's Willow Creek. It's directed by Bobcat Goldthwait. I don't want to go too far into spoiler territory. In fact, I don't want to say too much about this movie, except to tell you that it is a found footage Bigfoot film. And to say anything more about this movie, I think uh, would be sending this movie into spoiler territory. So yeah, that's all I really want to say about this movie because I do feel that the best way to experience this film is to go into it blind. I know it's a found footage film, and I know a lot of people are not fans of the found footage genre.
Yeah.
Myself, I absolutely love them, and I do feel this is one of the finest and most underrated films in that particular subgenre of film.
Awesome, man. I have and by the way, speaking of Bobcat Goldthwait, I would never expect him to direct a horror flick. So which is immediately I'm intrigued by that. And he's one of my favorite directors, dude, when it comes to movies like World's Greatest Dad, which is very twisted, dark comedy with a really big heart. One of Robin Williams' his best performance too. But yeah, so the director immediately has me intrigued, and then on top of that, a found footage Bigfoot movie just sounds awesome. And I do agree that found footage gets a pretty bad rap, and I actually have a found footage movie later on in this list too. So yeah, I'm excited to share it. But awesome, man. Yeah. So Willow Creek, how would you say this ranks among your top favorite found footage movies? Is it up there?
You know what? I would probably put this one at probably my top. I'd put it in my top 5 for sure.
Great. Okay.
Um, yeah, as far as found footage, the Last Exorcism, I thought that was an absolute fantastic found footage movie. Of course, Paranormal Activity,
Yeah.
and of course the Blair Witch Project. So yeah, all of those are fantastic. One thing about the Blair Witch Project, I actually got to interview Eduardo Sanchez, one of the co-directors of that film, and
Yeah.
that was just an awesome experience being able to do that. So yeah,
That does
so
sound
yeah, I
awesome.
got a lot of love for that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a very nice guy too.
Absolutely, man.
So
And you mentioned actually for a Paranormal Activity, you're in the credits, right?
I am. I'm in the thank you
Yeah,
credits. Yes.
yeah, yeah,
You have to slow it down to slow motion, but you'll see my name in there after about 15,000 other names. It's
yeah.
there, and that's my victory.
That's awesome, though, man. You're forever enshrined in found footage horror history, which is pretty cool.
Well, you were talking about Bobcat Goldthwait and
Yeah,
directing a horror film. If you ever saw Bobcat Goldthwait in the Police Academy movies from the 1980s,
yeah,
you would probably look and think you would be very surprised that this man would even direct a movie, period. his character is so over the top in those movies. If you've
Yeah,
never seen them,
and
just check them out.
sounds a lot like a stand-up too, man. He's a very over the top, very dark, satirical, stand-up comedian, and I love both his films, man. Sleeping Dogs Lie and World's Greatest Dad. They're in my top 5 favorite dark comedies of all time. It's just
Uh,
fantastic writing, very honest, like very warped and twisted, but the way he tackles that kind of subject matter is with the honesty and like candid nature that few filmmakers have the balls to do. So I definitely want to check out anything he makes, and the fact that he made this found footage horror movie just sounds great.
also, don't forget, he also, if I am correct, did he not also direct Shakes the Clown, or did he just star in that?
I am not sure. I'm pretty. Knowing that he's a writer and director, it wouldn't surprise me if he did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if I remember correctly, I think he did direct that. You might want to check your IMDb or something, but I'm pretty sure he did direct that film. It's about a down on his. If you've ever seen it, you know
Yeah,
the
no,
premise of it.
yeah, I think I've seen it a while back. I don't have a good recollection of it though. I'm
Neither do I.
100%. Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, dude. I mean, I'll check it out again because anything like I said, this guy makes is gold, basically. Oh, and one of his best movies, definitely not. It wouldn't fly well, I think, in today's political and social climate. But God Bless America, just absolutely hilarious. Just a masterpiece of dark comedy, brilliantly acted, hilarious. If you have a really warped and twisted sense of humor, you will absolutely love God Bless America. So my number 6 is The Last House on the Left, 2009 remake. So I want to keep this really brief for people who have not seen this movie, including the original. Start with this one and maybe don't even check out the original at all, because from what I hear, it is pretty dated. And this movie is not. This movie holds up extremely well in terms of even the way it's shot. It's a 2009 film. It has envelope pushing content for a mainstream American horror film, which I was shocked with. Some of the best acting I've seen in a horror movie. Martha McIsaac from Superbad, who plays Becca in Superbad. Just a hilarious role there. She's really down to earth and sweet in this movie, and does a brilliant job with the material she's given. And alongside her, Sarah Paxton is awesome too. And Monica Potter and Tony Goldwyn, I believe, they're just great as the parents in this movie. And Aaron Paul, who plays Jesse Pinkman from Breaking Bad, is in this. And people forget about this role. He is so slimy and creepy in this movie. It's great. So on top of the terrific acting, the pacing is phenomenal too, and the dialogue isn't that bad either. But this movie's primarily known for its kills and the violence in it, and it is much more intense and darker than usual mainstream horror. So just tread with caution if you're sensitive to that kind of stuff. And overall, man, yeah, the whole thing is just very well done, and there's several kills that you won't forget, including one involving, slight spoiler, one involving a microwave. But yeah, man, that's The Last House on the Left.
Yeah, you know what? I saw the remake. In fact, the two movies you mentioned, The Hills Have Eyes and The Last House on the Left.
Yeah.
I've got copies of both the original films, and I've got got copies of the remakes. And I have to 100% agree with you that the remakes are actually better than the original film. And that's not taking anything away from Wes Craven.
Absolutely not. The dude's a genius, including like another underrated film. I think you'd agree that's not on this list, but it's not only one of his most underrated. It's a very underrated horror thriller. Is Red Eye with Cillian Murphy and I believe
Yeah,
Rachel McAdams.
Yes, Rachel McAdams. I actually saw that movie in theaters and I loved it. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah.
But you never hear anybody talk about that movie. But yeah, like I said, not taking anything away from Wes Craven. Great filmmaker, knew his horror left and right.
Yeah.
But yeah, the remakes of those films just knock them out. They knock it out of the park. And you're right, Aaron Paul, good God, slimy little bastard in that movie.
Horrific. Yeah, very creepy performance.
Do you remember who the director of the remake of Last House on the Left is?
I do not actually.
Okay, looking here, I'm looking at the back of the DVD. I had to go and get it. It looks like a Dennis Iliadis, and it's definitely a director that I myself have not heard of. So,
Okay, dude. I mean, yeah, that's a good point. If like remaking a Craven film and making it just a masterpiece, definitely, uh, I think warrants anyone to check out more work from this guy. So I'll definitely have to give his back catalog a look.
okay, so my number five is an Australian film. The best way to describe this film, well, first of all, I'm going to tell you the title of it, and that is The Loved Ones. And the best way to describe this film is that it is a young girl named Lola who is smitten, so to speak, with this young fella in high school or in school, and she is rejected. And let's just say she does not take rejection very well. In fact,
Not at all. She doesn't. She doesn't take it at all.
she doesn't take it at all. In fact, she takes it not only well, she doesn't even take it with a grain of salt. She takes it with a power drill, a hammer, some nails, I believe some drain cleaner, if I remember correctly. I may be adding in things that she used to hurt this kid with.
Yeah, we don't
Because
even want to, man. And I feel like it's one of my favorite movies of all time, man. Horror movies for sure, super underrated. I'm glad you brought that one up, man. I forget about that one, and I don't even want to, go into spoilers because it's such a wild ride.
the bad part about it is that despite the horrible things that are done in this movie by this girl,
Yeah.
I found myself strangely attracted to her.
Oh yeah, man.
I
She's pretty
mean,
for sure.
yeah, so yeah, that is my number five pick is Australia's The Loved Ones. This is directed, if I'm trying to find it here, Sean Byrne, and I think he's directed some other stuff as well, but I just cannot remember what the other films are that he's directed. He may have directed an episode or two of Wolf Creek, the series, but don't quote
Okay.
me on that.
Really, yeah. The Loved Ones, guys. If you guys are into survival horror, which is a very niche genre, I think, of horror that is explored by the video game industry a lot, but not enough by horror, cinema, I think. So The Loved Ones is a fantastic one. It's one of those movies that takes place pretty much in an isolated location. And what they do with this simple premise is just incredible. It's shot well. The acting is phenomenal. And yeah, I'm so glad John included it in his top five. It definitely deserves to be there.
Well, speaking about horror or about survival horror and video games, I also tend to think that survival horror is included even more in books than it is. Well, it's kind of a
Yeah,
tie
for
between
sure.
books and video games more so than actual horror movies, you know. And it's definitely a genre. Yeah, it's definitely a genre that does need to be explored even more in film. So yeah, that was my number five pick, The Loved Ones, directed by Seth Byrne or
Awesome,
Sean
man.
Byrne. Sean Byrne.
Sean Byrne,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, so to kick off my top five is a movie that it's fairly well known within, hardcore circles of horror fans, but it's not that well known in as just a art house movie, which it basically is, but it's not overly artsy. It's just the right amount for the subject matter, I think, and that is 2012's Excision. So this is I want to give a very basic premise without spoiling anything for this one. You follow a disturbed and delusional high schooler who has aspirations in the medical field, and she wants to go to extremes to earn the approval of her bitch mother, basically, who's extremely controlling and played beautifully by Tracy Lords. This is a really well written, darkly comical, and very daring horror film that a lot of people just haven't checked out. And I'm shocked whenever I found out just how many people haven't watched this one, man, because the dialogue in this is delivered so good. It's pitch perfect delivery, and it reminds me in terms of how the dialogue is delivered of some of these jokes and lines reminds me a lot of Christian Bale's delivery in American Psycho. So Anna Lynn McCord, who plays the the main character in this, is just brilliant, and you can tell she had a lot of fun with her role. If you enjoy pitch black humor, you are absolutely going to dig this movie. Be warned, again, there's some very disturbing, highly sexual, and very super gory scenes. So if that doesn't, if a mixture of that stuff doesn't sound like something you'd want to watch, definitely stay away from this one. If you don't think you can handle also following a character with severe social problems and basically sociopathic tendencies, and or you're uncomfortable taking in stories regarding mental illness in a very blunt and extreme way, you definitely want to avoid this one too, because you're not going to have a good time with it. If all that sounds like an awesome mixture for you, then you are in for a treat, because Excision is a masterpiece, in my opinion, of the dark comedy genre, mixed in with some truly disturbing horror elements. If you want to watch an original horror movie, this is the one to go with. And in my opinion, the endings is one of the best endings of all time. I didn't see it coming, and it shocks me to my very core every time I watch this movie. So that's 2012's Excision.
So this one with Excision, I did see it, and I have to say, when I did see it, I've only seen it once, and I didn't like it as
Okay.
much as you did.
Do you
Okay,
remember? Do you remember why you didn't like it?
I think because at the time I just found it to be so weird, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Um, and and don't get me wrong, there were performances in that movie. Like you said, Annalyn McCord
Yeah.
just knocks it out of the park. She was fantastic. Also, and also I got to give the biggest kudos to Tracy Lords, because um, with that ending scene, and I don't want to give away any spoilers, but because she is such a bitch throughout this entire movie,
Absolutely. Yeah.
that ending scene and the look on her face, it
It's
just
perfect, dude. I'm telling you, man, it's one of my favorite endings of all time. I think for sure.
one thing I will say about it is
Yeah.
one scene that got to me was a scene involving a bathroom and
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. We'll keep the spoilers.
a feminine product,
Yeah.
if you know what I'm talking about.
Ab- uh, Absolutely.
Yeah, so yeah, that one. But yeah, that is, yeah, I'm definitely gonna watch it again to try to get a better appreciation of it. So
Awesome, man.
yeah. Okay, so my number four pick. Now this is one that you, in your honorable mentions, you talked about the sequel, and of course I'm talking about Wolf Creek 2. My number four pick is the original film Wolf Creek. This is an Australian horror film. You could probably classify it as slasher. I believe you could also possibly classify this as survival horror, but that would be kind of a loose interpretation of it. This is a film that is loosely based on the real life exploits of serial killer Ivan Milat. This
Yeah.
stars John Jarrett as I guess you could call him a roving serial killer who just goes up and down and across the landscape or the outback of Australia looking for victims.
Yeah.
And he just happens to run into four young people. I'm kind of doing the quotation marks. He befriends them.
Yeah.
They think he's completely harmless, and it turns out to not be that way at all. This was a very, in some places, this was actually a very disturbing horror movie. Okay, so I don't want to say much more about this film. But I just have to say that I highly recommend this film. It is definitely one that is very disturbing, and there are probably some trigger warnings for this movie. So yeah, if you're going to watch a movie like this, you need to go into it with some pretty wide open eyes.
Yeah. And let me ask you something. Which movie do
Mm.
you like better in terms of just as a horror movie experience? Do you like the first one better or the second one?
I believe as a horror movie experience, I'm going to go with the first one
I agree.
because it is just so gritty. It's grimy. It's a dirty film. You were talking about what was the one you were talking about earlier that just had this dirty feel to it? I believe it
Oh,
was Evil Dead, or was it?
that could be said about all all the films on our list, I think. But yeah, I get what
Yeah,
you mean.
yeah,
That one, Wolf Creek, it has a very realistic grit to it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's it. So yeah, that's it. That's my number four pick.
Okay, so my number four is going to be, in my opinion, it's one of the best revenge films ever made. It's 2010's South Korean movie, I Saw the Devil. So this is directed by Kim Ji-woon. He also directed this really great gangster flick called A Bittersweet Life, and he also made this really well done horror movie called A Tale of Two Sisters, which was remade into this American movie called The Uninvited, I believe, which was decent for sure. But yeah, exactly. John put up the two thumbs down, and I actually agree. I was nice when I said that. It's not a good movie in my opinion either. But I Saw the Devil is a modern day masterpiece in terms of grindhouse and revenge cinema, I think. And everything from the cinematography and acting to the plot is simply masterful. The suspense in this movie is expertly crafted, and it fits so well with the pacing, and I think this movie might have my favorite grounded performance of a serial killer. The serial killer is not charismatic or flashy or romanticized in any way. It really feels like some guy who you've come in contact with at some point in your life who you never would dream is a serial killer. So it's played brilliantly by the actor named Choi Min-sik. He has terrific delivery and really revels in the sadistic nature of his character, which it's just phenomenal. And the script is just unpredictable and it unfolds in a really sleek fashion. The tone is just suffocating, dark, and morbid. And I felt it weaves in and out of certain subgenres of horror seamlessly, especially when Choi Min-sik visits one of another character in the movie at the halfway mark. It really goes into some truly violent and dark territory. This movie again has some of the most heinous acts of violence I've ever seen in a movie ever. So be warned. The action scenes, they're not plenty, but when they are there, they're super badass and well filmed. And I think the ending is just equal parts cathartic, disturbing, and unnerving. So I Saw the Devil, which was made in 2010, is definitely one of the most underrated horror thrillers of all time. And have you seen this, John?
I have seen it. I probably saw it. What year did you say it came out? Was it 2000,
10, yeah.
2010? I believe I probably saw it around 2011, 2012. Yeah, I'm like you. I was blown away by this one. It's definitely, it's great. I loved it. I
Yeah.
don't have a whole lot to say about it because I don't remember too much about it,
Okay,
but
yeah.
yeah, so I did enjoy it. Yeah, the killer in the I Saw the Devil. If I remember correctly, didn't he play the lead in Old Boy?
Absolutely. Yep. Choi Min-sik.
That's what. Yeah, that's what I
But
thought.
and phenomenal
Um,
movie for anyone who hasn't seen that either. I was debating whether or not to include that, but I don't think that's really horror. Although like some of the events that happen in that are truly horrific, that is another masterpiece for sure. Yeah, and Choi Min-sik is great in that as well.
okay, so my number three pick is Inside, and this is a French extreme horror film. The premise of this movie is you have a young woman who her husband has been killed in an auto accident, and about 4 months later, around Christmas time, in fact, basically right around Christmas Eve, she is set or scheduled to go to the hospital to induce labor. However, the night before, she is the victim of a home invasion,
Yeah.
and it is a woman who is bound and determined to take her infant from her. And this woman does not care one bit whether the fact that she is not given birth. She is bound and determined to take this this child from this woman by any means necessary. This stars Alison Powdery as the pregnant woman, and also stars Beatrice Dahl as she is usually called in the credits, the femme fatale. Um, I think the reason I picked this as an underrated film is because outside of the United States, or it's probably very well received, but here in the United States, I don't think very many people have heard of this movie. Uh, as far as the performances, Beatrice Dahl gives one of the most terrifying performances of any actress that I've ever seen in a horror film. There's
agree.
one
Yeah.
particular, huh? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was saying I absolutely agree with that, man. And in fact, you mentioned that performance that she gives. It reminds me a lot of Sharifa Danish's performance in Macabre, meaning that
Right.
just that terrifying aura that she brings to the screen. Those two performances, I think, like from especially from a female actress, really got under my skin.
Yeah, I think one of the most terrifying scenes in Inside, and this is not even anything involving her trying to take this child from the woman, but it's a scene early in the movie when she's already in the house. You don't realize that she's gotten into the house, and I believe Alison Powdery's character is lying on the couch, and behind her you just see this darkness behind her, and all of a sudden you start to see
Yeah.
the femme fatale's face just come into view,
It's horrifying. Yeah,
and it's just
it slowly sinks into frame. Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of the reverse of the movie The Strangers. If you remember, if you ever saw The Strangers,
Yeah.
how they could be walking around and the strangers, the ones with the masks on, could be standing there and they don't notice them, but you do, and you're just like, whoa, and it can really freaks you out. It does. It absolutely freaks you out, and that's the way I felt about this particular scene in Inside, and also the thing about the gore in this movie, it does not flinch. That camera doesn't flinch one bit from showing the gore.
Yeah, and
And
I didn't even
there's
want to spoil anything about it, so I'm not going to comment
yeah,
on that. I'm just going to agree with you. There are certain scenes that not only the gore, but it's the level of gore coupled with the action that just took place that is just mind blowing, and it makes for some great horror for sure.
to me, Inside, Frontiers, and Martyrs are the top three of the French extreme horror films. And I know a lot of people give the higher nod to Martyrs, but the reason I give Inside a higher nod than Martyrs, as far as to me being a better film and a more disturbing film, is because something like this could happen, and it has happened.
Yeah.
And yeah, and that just makes it even more absolutely terrifying to me. So that's why this is my number three pick for top 10 or my number three pick for underrated horror film.
Cool. So yeah, my number three, just like you said, happens to be that French extreme horror movie that you were talking about, Frontiers. So it's a 2007 movie, and the brief synopsis is it's about a gang of young thieves that are basically trying to escape from Paris during the aftermath of an election, and they find themselves at an inn run by neo-Nazis. So this movie is an extreme in every sense of the word. I think it's been banned in several countries, or heavily edited at the very least, like Germany and Thailand. Uh, it's very, very depraved in its content. So, and it's NC-17, I believe, which is never given out. So, when an NC-17 is given out, it's either for a very graphic sex scene or extreme content in every regard. And in this case, it's the latter. So well made, so stylistic. Pacing is phenomenal. There's never a dull moment, which I really loved in this movie. Once the brutality starts, it never lets up. The script kind of feels like the best novel that Richard Lehman never wrote.
You know what? I would absolutely agree. I have seen Frontiers and like Inside and like I mentioned Martyrs. Yeah, I did. I loved Frontiers. Plus, also that one of the neo Nazis. I can't remember the actor's name, but he was also in another French film called Brotherhood of the Wolf,
Okay.
and he played one of the men that was hunting uh, the beast of Gévaudan, because that's what that movie, of course, is based on, is that particular werewolf legend.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was kind of interesting seeing him in such a brutal role that he played in Frontiers, because, like you said, uh, same thing with Inside, and the same thing with Frontiers and Inside, is both of those movies. Yeah, they don't flinch. They don't let up from the blood and the gore.
Yeah,
So yeah, and
absolutely not, man. Yeah, and like I think without giving anything away, this movie might just have the most intense final 20 minutes I've ever seen in a horror movie. Period. The last 20 minutes is the definition of intense. I loved how it was executed, and yeah, this is just super underrated, and you're right, Martyrs completely overshadows Frontiers and Inside when it comes to French extreme horror cinema. And in my opinion, how I personally would rank those three movies for originality, I would give it to Martyrs probably. But in terms of which I enjoy the most, I would put Inside number one, then Frontiers, and then Martyrs.
yeah, that's exactly the same way I would do it as well. That would be my rating, because yeah, I loved Inside, and yeah,
Hmm.
Martyrs. In fact, you could actually put Martyrs and Inside in a tie for number one,
Oh
and
man,
you'd
it,
be
it would be a
perfect.
fantastic double bill too, dude. If you guys haven't checked out Frontiers or Inside or Martyrs, and you're in the mood for marathoning some just heavy movies, you're like, I just want to take it all. Definitely watch those three in that order. You won't be disappointed. If you had to pick
Um,
one, let's say you just wanted to check out one, I'd go with Inside first.
yeah, the one thing I want to say about Inside, and it's something I didn't add when I was talking about it originally, there is an American remake of this film, and the one thing I will say about this is that the the one thing I admire that they did not do with the American remake is they did not try to top the gore in this film. They did not try to. They made it more of a thriller than a gore horror film.
You think if they tried to remake it with the same tone and goal in mind, it would have been a disaster because the original is such a masterpiece that it's kind of like where we talked about. That's why the Evil Dead remake works so well, I think, because it's different in
Yeah,
tone,
exactly,
basically. Yeah.
exactly. Yes, exactly. Plus, also the female lead, or the woman that played the femme fatale in the remake, Laura Herring. She did an absolutely knockout job, for what she was given. My number two pick is May, and this stars Angela Bettis, Jeremy
Nice.
Sisto, and Anna Faris. May is about a girl of about, I'd say May's about 25 years old. She's a social outcast. She's got a lazy eye, and she's got no friends. And she takes the notion of, if you can't find a friend, make one, to the most extreme of extremes.
Yes.
This movie, yeah, it just, yeah, Bettis. Bettis, to me, I think, is one of the most underrated horror actresses working today, and I think a lot of that reason being is because she normally doesn't play the final girl type. And nowadays, most people, when they think about female leads in horror movies, or even female characters in horror movies, a lot of times they think of them as the final girl, and that's what they want to see. But then you have performances like we were talking about with Beatrice Dahl in Inside. Definitely not the final girl in that one. Well, kind of she was, but we're not talking about that. But it's a totally different trope for that. but Angela Bettis the same way. Um, she usually does not play the final girl. She usually plays the one the final girl is gonna want to run away from.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that's but the supporting performances in this movie also, especially from Anna Faris. You know, you don't expect really. I'm not saying she's a bad actress, but you just don't. I didn't expect the performance that she gave to be so good and so on point.
Absolutely, man. And May is definitely one of my favorite horror movies of all time too, and it's criminally underrated. And the performances are what make this movie, as well as the writing. It really goes to some dark, weird places when you least expect it. Like there's certain scenes that are going a certain way, and then all of a sudden it switches up on you tonally, and it just leaves a very nasty pit in your stomach.
Exactly. Yes. So yeah, that is my number two pick. Is May, directed by Lucky McKee, and again starring the to me fantastic Angela Bettis.
Awesome, dude. Great pick. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that one a lot more people need to see for sure. And it's an older movie, so definitely for the time it's been out, I'm surprised more people have not even heard of it. So, yeah, May is a great pick. Okay, so my number 2 pick is a found footage movie, and it's definitely my favorite found footage movie of all time. With the other two in my top 3 being the Blair Witch Project and Paranormal Activity, this is still number 1 for me. It's called The Possession of Michael King. It came out in 2014. And another shout out to my buddy Nicholas Gray from Spooky Noodles. I sent him a copy of this because he said he never saw it. So I just love spreading the love of this movie. What makes this movie my favorite, it is creepy. The script is razor sharp and contains some amazing dialogue. There's some genuinely unsettling moments. Shane Johnson, the lead in this movie, Michael King, is what makes this movie amazing to watch. He is so charismatic and hilarious in this leading role, as this guy Michael King. It takes the whole movie up to another level, just his performance alone. I related so hard with his skepticism towards the occult, and just coupled with how everything was shot and coupled with just the premise, which I'll get to in a second, it really made this just the whole thing more immersive for me. It's my third favorite. It might just be my third favorite possession movie of all time, in all seriousness. And the general premise, without giving anything away, it's basically about a man who faces the death of his wife, and he is a hardcore skeptic, and he basically decides that he's going to set out to get every single curse, black magic ritual, everything occult under the sun performed on him, just to prove that all of this is BS. And that's where the story takes a very interesting turn. And just that concept alone, and coupled with the fact that it's a found footage movie, it's a very funny, well written, easily takes the cake for my number 2 spot of one of the most underrated horror movies ever. The Possession of Michael King, and it was made in 2014.
Wow. Okay. First of all, I have not seen that movie. This is one that definitely with me, it flew under the radar.
Awesome.
Yeah, it definitely flew under the radar. I'm gonna have to check Amazon Prime or something.
Yeah, and it's on
And
this movie in particular, guys. You can, if you guys don't know about the free movie streaming platform Tubi, I think it's Tubi TV. It's called actually on Google. You can watch this for free on that. So I highly recommend you guys check it out.
yeah, that definitely sounds like something that is way definitely up my alley. Especially being found footage, and then the premise that you were talking about of
Yeah,
that's
it's great,
just
man.
trying to take on all these entities or whatever curses,
Yeah,
demons.
and
So
the
yeah,
lead
that is
performance is just hilarious. Like I said, it's fantastic, man. It's I'm not even. This is not a slight to like the horror genre, but his performance in this in the leading role is so good that you forget sometimes basically you're watching like a entertaining horror movie because it's like poignant where it needs to be. It's very snarky and sarcastic, and it's just great.
sounds good. Speaking of found footage
Yeah.
movies, uh, Have you ever seen a found footage werewolf movie called Where? WER.
No, dude, I had that on my list, but now I'm more excited to watch it because I didn't realize it was found footage.
It is found footage. It actually stars AJ Cook from the TV series Criminal Minds.
Cool.
And
Okay.
yeah, so I love the fact she's branching out into other stuff. But yeah, it is definitely. Now, as far as the makeup effects, as far as how the werewolf looks, it's very humanoid in the way it looks. But just putting that genre, those two genres together, just is works so well for me. So, and it's a hard movie to get a hold of. So, yeah,
Oh yeah, dude, I can't wait to check it out for sure. Especially after finding out it's found footage. Like I said, a found footage werewolf movie just sounds right up my alley. And I got decent reviews too, from what I remember.
yes, it did. It did. Yes.
Yeah. Cool, man. And that brings us to our number one pick. And I know what your number one is. I'm super excited to hear your thoughts on it. And I love the movie just like you. So why don't you go ahead?
Okay, so my number one pick is The Woman. This is directed by Lucky McKee. Uh, I mentioned that Inside was the goriest horror film that I've got on this list. The Woman has to be the single most disturbing horror film that I have on this list, and
Oh yeah,
that's all.
man. I mean, yeah, and that's where you want to leave it, you said, right? In terms of going into its content and stuff.
Yeah, because I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah, you know what? Shouts out to our buddy Josh Edwards from Working Man Reads. I did a top 20 favorite books of all time list with him, and he included Jack Ketchum's The Girl Next Door, and his reaction was pretty much the same. He's like, you know what? This is clearly a masterpiece. That's why it was in his top 20. But he's like, I don't really know what to say about it, and also not without giving anything away. So I think it is a smart decision that you're choosing not to go deeper into the plot, because I remember the first time I saw The Woman, man, totally caught me off guard. I didn't know it was based on a Ketchum story.
Yeah, the tagline of this, and I really hope I'm not going too far into spoiler territory. But the tagline of this, I'm looking at the DVD. It says, "Not every monster lives in the wild." So
Yeah, it's a great actually tagline considering the you know the beats of the story. So yeah.
one thing I will say about this movie is there is actually a sequel, a cinematic sequel to this, and it's called Darlin. And it pretty well picks up where the woman left off, or maybe a few years or so down the line. And it is actually directed by Pollyanna McIntosh, who of course does reprise her role as the woman in Darlin also, and it's actually a very credible and well done sequel. I was very pleasantly surprised.
Wow, you totally
So,
just blew my mind, man. I never knew there was a cinematic sequel to that. Wow, that's epic. I need to check that out for sure. Darling, you said
yeah,
it's called, right?
Darlin, yeah,
Okay, yeah,
yeah,
cause yeah, I mean, but like, yeah, going back to like, what are your thoughts on the performance from the father, man, without giving anything away? Was it or was it not one of the most chilling performances from an actor you've ever seen?
yeah. I will say yes, it is. It was incredibly chilling. It got to the point where I literally wanted to kill this man myself. Let's put it that
Yeah,
way.
like the actor, right?
And
Not even, yeah, not just the character,
not
the
only
actor.
him, not just him, that
Yeah,
kid.
yeah,
Yeah,
without
yeah,
giving any spoilers, it's just yeah, there's and I guess you could say by the end of the movie, it feels cathartic in the sickest way possible. But not no one is really a hero at all in this movie. Every single person is trash. And I think that's what
yeah, exactly.
Jack Ketchum is a master in basically skinning the face off of humanity and showing how just how filthy it can get, and from all aspects, and just yeah, the woman is one that's very underrated for sure. super underrated. The book is underrated, but in the movie is especially underrated. So I'm super happy you included it.
Yeah, you know what? I need to actually go back and reread the book. In fact, I need to go back and reread Offspring.
I've never read
When I,
Offspring, man, at all, so I'm super excited.
well, after I read Off Season, and that one just is, good God. I mean, I don't even see how they can make that into a movie. That's just how sick that book is. And from what I've heard, the
Yeah.
unrated version of that book is even worse, which makes me want to go out and find it and, say that I have a copy of it.
Dude, I gotta read more Ketchum, man. His stuff is like right up my alley, obviously. And if anyone isn't familiar with Jack Ketchum's writing or The Girl Next Door, he just is someone like basically like you pretty much get a feel for the kind of stuff he writes based on what we said about this movie. But if you're into very dark fiction and you want to just see an author who's not only a fantastic writer but one of the best storytellers of all time, then Jack Ketchum's like a must.
Okay, so yes, The Woman, that is my number one pick for the most underrated horror film of all time. And that leads into you. What is yours, Syon? What is your number one pick for the most underrated horror film of all time?
Well, John, my number one pick is a Chinese film. You could tell I'm a huge fan of foreign horror films, and I truly believe that some of the best horror that's ever come out does come from a lot of foreign countries, and number one is no exception. While it may not be, I think, the most underrated, horror film of all time, it is 100% the most underrated slasher of all time, and that is 2010's Dream Home. So it's a Chinese film, so you will have to read subtitles. Totally worth it. Like I said, most underrated slasher of the last 20 years, in my opinion, easy. And this is going to be a real treat, man, for anyone who's into slasher movies and hasn't seen this. I envy you because watching this for the first time was such a great experience. It is one of the few slashers that truly sickened me to my stomach, not in a cheesy way. It's creeped me out because of the level of violence, how mean spirited it is. Totally it embodies what a horrific slasher movie should be. The acting is 100 times better than what you usually get from a slasher movie. The lead actress, whose name is Josie Ho, she's just awesome. She really sells this character well and brings the script to life, and it might just have the most brutal opening to any horror movie I've ever seen. It's really well done. It's super creepy when you realize what's about to happen, and it also takes the cake for the most demented and ridiculous kill scenes in any modern day slasher. And I know I haven't seen the Hatchet series by Adam Green, I think that was the director, and I know that series is known for its notorious kills like Victor Crowley, Hatchet 1 through 3. So I need to watch that, but in terms of the ones I've seen, and I've seen a good amount, they pale in comparison, man. In terms of like the just the animalistic, no holds barred nature of the kills. In a modern slasher, you won't see anything that's more brutal than this one, and very creative too. But it's also it's it's the only slasher that really got under my skin, and not even in terms of the gore, just in terms of the atmosphere. And that is very rare for a slasher movie to do at all. For newer ones, it's basically non existent. So this was a nice change of pace, a breath of fresh air. It's criminally underrated. It's a must watch for horror fans and slasher fans who want to just, if you want the old school brutality of, like an 80s slasher movie, but you want like the basically professional sheen of a modern day film, you can't go wrong with Dream Home. It's a masterpiece in my opinion, and yeah, it's scary as hell, dark as hell, violent as hell, and just a blast overall. So it's 2010's Dream Home.
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to say about this is when you originally, however many hours ago that we've been doing this, when
Yeah.
you originally mentioned that your number one was going to be Dream Home, I got to admit, I got a little bit worried for you because I thought you were talking about the movie with Daniel Craig
No,
and Rachel
Dream
White.
House. Yes.
Yeah, I said, wait a minute, that's Dream House, but I got really disturbed by the fact it's like he picked that for number one. What the hell is wrong with him? Good Lord. No. Okay. So from what you're saying, as far as the kills in this being inventive and being realistic, of
Yeah.
course, it almost sounds like you could possibly compare that to Lars von Trier's The House that Jack Built.
Oh, so I will say that is I did not include it in in underrated because I personally I really enjoyed that movie, but I've only seen it once and I was so hyped for it. And I'm a Lars von Trier fanboy, so I don't feel I had the most genuine reaction to that movie, so I'll need to go watch it again. In terms of the kills of that movie, Dream Home is even more creative, man. It's not
Okay.
it's not as dark as the house that Jack built for sure. In terms of the brutality, it absolutely is like it goes further than that, I'd say. So just picture a slasher movie like that. And there's so many. The body count in this movie is just crazy, dude. I'm and it's a blast. And you never know when the kills are gonna happen because the way the story is told also is it's quite unique for a slasher movie. So yeah, I just love this movie so much, man. Dream Home. What a great movie. So yeah.
So is Dream Home, is it available for streaming?
As far as I know, it is available for $3 or $4 on Amazon. Yes, with subtitles and everything, completely the full version, no cuts or anything. So highly recommend you check that out. If you're a horror fan, man, and a fan of slashers, I'd say just pay like the $20 or whatever, just buy this movie. You're gonna want to keep it in your collection. It's one of a kind. It's a masterpiece, and it's rare to see a movie 2010 and post 2010 that is just so well acted and this brutal when it comes to a slasher movie. So yeah, Dream Home is my number one, and your number one is also one of my favorite movies of all time, The Woman. So yeah, that's our list, guys, and I'm so happy we did this, and October's here. This is the perfect time for anyone new to horror or already seasoned horror fans. I think there's something for everyone on the movies we listed. Wouldn't you agree, John?
I would agree. You know what? Let's go ahead and just do a just from 10 down to 1. Just go ahead and list these movies one more time.
Awesome,
I'll go ahead
sure,
and
man.
start. So for my number 10, I'm going with Paranormal Activity 3. My number 9, Evil Dead, the remake. Number 8, Suspiria, the remake. Number 7, Tucker and Dale versus Evil. Number 6, Willow Creek. Number 5, The Loved Ones. Number 4, Wolf Creek. Number 3, Inside. Number 2, May. And number 1, The Woman.
Awesome, man. Cool. Okay, so my list 10 to 1. Number 10 is Joshua. Number 9 is Eden Lake. Eden Lake. Pronounce that a little more clear. Eden Lake. Number 8 is Macabre. Number 7 is Cat Sick Blues. Number 6 is The Last House on the Left, the remake, the 2009 remake. Number 5 is Excision. Number 4 is I Saw the Devil. Number 3 is Frontiers. Number 2 is The Possession of Michael King. And number 1 is Dream Home.
Sounds great.
Man,
So
thanks
yeah,
so
with
much for having me on, John. Seriously, like I like I'm all for talking about books. You know, I'm an author at the end of the day, a small author with a really minuscule body of work, but an author nonetheless. And I love reading's always going to be like out of movies and reading. I'll always go with reading at the end of the day, but I love movies. I've loved movies my whole life, and especially when it comes to horror, it just holds a special place in my heart. And I hope that came off in this video. And I'm so happy you reached out to me to do this because I was more than happy because you are one of the few people, along with Adam Cesare and Nick from Spooky Noodles, that really wears your love for horror on your sleeve. So yeah, thanks so much, man.
Oh, hey, it was great. I had a great time. I just hope that I didn't uh, stumble too much over my words
Not
and
at
what
all,
I
man.
wanted to say. So, yeah, I was very appreciative. And like I said, I would really love to do like a top 5 or top 10 most disturbing horror films because, like I said, I've got quite a few in my head right now already.
You know what,
Um,
man? I'd love to do that. Let's just do that before Halloween. Maybe we might as well do it like the week of Halloween. So hopefully you guys like that.
yeah, let me see what I can come up with. Probably do a top 5 on that one.
Yeah, a top five.
Um, yeah. So yeah, and I'm pretty sure you know what my number one is going to be. We talked about it yesterday.
Yes,
Um,
yeah, yeah, for
so
sure.
yeah,
It's the movie you said, "Oh man, something must be really wrong if you can watch this twice." And when I admitted I saw it twice, but I saw it once on my own, but with and the second time with a buddy, just because I wanted to see just someone someone else's reaction in lifetime to the movie. But that's gonna be a blast, man. I can't wait to do that with you too.
you know what? I got to ask, what was their reaction? Because I'm very curious. I'm probably not going to
He
be surprised, but I'm very curious.
he uh he didn't ask to stop the movie at any point, which I was very impressed by. And number two, he couldn't sleep for 2 days after it was done, which I don't blame him for at all. Because this is someone who was the Sixth Sense to him was like a very scary movie. So I'm a very brutal friend for showing him this movie. And John's looking at me now like I must have something wrong with me in the head to really do that to him. But you know, let's just say he's a horror fan now. So take that for what it's worth. He's a fan of all the movies we listed here. So I'm just happy, man. And yeah, that's going to be super fun and definitely more really fitting for Halloween. So I can't wait to do that.
Yeah, sounds great. And some of the movies that you listed today, I haven't seen, and I know some of the movies that I listed today you haven't seen. So it's going to
Absolutely,
be
man.
very interesting. So yeah, I believe the first one I'm going to seek out is Joshua.
Awesome.
I
Yeah.
think I'm going to try to find out tonight. Whenever October hits, I've already determined that I'm going to watch as many horror movies in October as I can possibly watch. And the first one on my list is going to be Joshua, which is your believe was your number 10 pick.
Yep. Yeah.
So yeah, and then I believe the next one I'm going to go after that is Possession of Michael King,
Awesome.
and then I'll work my way down. And again, like I said, I'm going to give Excision another chance. That is one thing I think a lot of people don't do when it comes to horror movies is that they get it in their head that either A, it's a remake, so I'm going to hate it automatically,
Yeah.
or B, I'm just not going to give it any sort of chance whatsoever. And uh, that's just ridiculous. So yeah.
Absolutely, man. And I think your list has reminded me of some of my favorite movies that I haven't checked out in a while, so I'm just gonna rewatch a bunch of them. Like the Evil Dead remake, I'm definitely gonna line up in October. I'm gonna I might just do this tomorrow because I can't wait even till October, which is only in like a week, but I really want to make a double feature marathon out of The Woman and Darling, so I'm definitely gonna do that.
Oh, that sounds good. Sounds great.
Awesome, man.
I don't think you're going to be disappointed by Darling in the least.
Great.
I
I'm
was
I'm
very
happy, man.
impressed with it.
Yeah.
So anyway, Syon, it has been absolutely fantastic you coming on here and talking about your top 10 favorite underrated films. And yeah, I just got a whole new list of movies to watch. So yeah, thank you for that.
Well, I'm so happy, man,
Thank you
and
very much.
I'm super appreciative of you having me on, man, and I hope everyone whether you're new to horror movies or you love them as much as me and John, you take some new movies with you to just enjoy this October because books are awesome, man, and definitely read as much horror as possible, but there's so much great horror cinema out there, and it laid the foundation for many of these authors writing their stuff that it's truly a crime not to just enjoy some of them. So definitely keep up with your horror movies. And yeah, thanks so much, man.
Thank you, Syon. Appreciate it, man.
All right, take care.